Let's move on and talk more about work stuff that you got to deal with.
Sure. So I think to start off, to transition from life insurance into work benefits, most people do get some life insurance through work. So it's good to check and see what you may already have in place before you're going off shopping. And then you can often choose to buy up insurance through your work plan in lieu of going out and finding an insurance salesman and buying it on your own.
That's what we ended up actually doing, was just doing it through the Fool.
Yeah, and depending on the situation, it may be more expensive or may not. But what is really appealing is if you have health issues and you going out on your own to get a policy, could be very expensive, where it might be easier or less expensive if you do it as part of a group plan.
Right. And I found the reverse scenario to be true, where if you're healthy and young, it's usually cheaper to go off on your own and separate yourself from a big group to benefit from your own age and health. So that's number one. The other thing is health insurance. So don't forget to add your newborn to your plan, because they cost a lot of money.
Because you're going to need it, buddy. Yeah.
So actually, in the first month after the baby was born, I got a bill from our insurance provider for like $19,000. And I thought I screwed that up. I was like, oh man, did I forget to do something that our HR person told me to do months and months ago? Turns out that wasn't the case. There's like a coordination of benefits thing that they call for every year to make sure I don't have other insurance. So they still pay out, and I guess they never got me. And we're like, okay, let's just bill him for the whole thing and see if he pays.
See what happens. But, maybe we'll get a check.
But yeah, so you'll want to log into your account or call your service provider and just make sure that you add your dependent as soon as you can, so that they're covered for all their hospital visits too.
We had this nightmare scenario that was suggested to us where during the baby classes, right? You got to go to the hospital and you learn to like breathe through the pain and whatever. And so the woman, had opened it up to the class for questions, and someone raised their hands, and he didn't have a question, but he wanted to point out that when you go to the hospital to give a baby, the hospital may be within your network, but the anesthesiologist, for example, may not. And so you may get your hospital bill taken care of, but you're going to get drilled by the anesthesiologist for tens of thousands of dollars if you if they're not in your network or in your coverage. And so that's just a terrifying little tidbit that I like to share with people to think about. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do. Like, it's not like you can necessarily schedule your birth. I mean, I guess you can with a C-section, but you kind of get stuck with whatever anesthesiologist is on call. But just something to think about is that there's a number of fun ways where you can get a big bill.
Yeah, honey, we're doing home delivery, natural birth.
Because I am in coverage. My bills are very cheap. And
the house is in network.
Yeah. All right. So we covered health insurance. All right. How about flexible spending?
Yeah. So one thing that you may want to plan ahead for, and I think, as years go on and you have more experience with your child, you'll know exactly how to use this to the best of its ability. But you can actually defer dollars into a flexible spending plan for dependent care. And the benefit of that is you get to defer dollars pre-tax, so your dollar goes a longer way. And whenever you have an eligible expense for child care, you can reimburse yourself through that plan. And I believe you can do up to $5,000 every year. Mm-hmm. The only thing, though, is it's use it or lose it. But it's a way to make your dollar go a little bit further as you pay for child care.
And of course, there's healthcare flexible spending as well, and your healthcare bills will likely go up. And the other thing is that in many of these types of programs that your employer, you can only sign up at one time during the year, during the enrollment period. However, in most situations, if there's a major life event, that allows you to redo that, and having a kid usually qualifies. So you can change how much you contribute to these plans.
Right.
All right. What about disability insurance?
A child is a good opportunity to make sure that you're covered if you were to become disabled. Because maybe on one income, if you have suppose you have a spouse or a significant other with you, hopefully, you might be able to cover all your needs on one income during that period. But if you're taking care of a baby, your expenses are going up. So you want to make sure you know how much you'll have covered if something were to happen to you, to make sure that's enough buffer for you to meet all your other expenses, whether it be childcare, food costs, clothing, et cetera, that will come your way.
Yeah, disability is a tough one. I mean, first of all, most people get some through their employer.
Right.
Generally, if you work for a larger employer. So that's good, although it doesn't last forever, generally speaking. Buying it on your own, it's really tough because it's really expensive, because the odds are actually that at some point in your life, the odds are much higher that before age 65, you'll become disabled, then you'll die, which is why life insurance is relatively cheap. Disability insurance is not.
Right. So in my history, anytime I've seen someone shopping for it individually, they've decided, maybe I'll take the risk. But it's actually, a risk that you want to make sure is covered. Thankfully, most employers do cover it to some extent. Just verify to what extent that is. And then an interesting wrinkle there is also it can be taxable or non-taxable depending on how it's paid for.
Yeah.
So if you're paying out of pocket, usually your benefits are after tax. But if it's being paid for you by an employer and that therefore not taxed, it's taxed to you as income when you receive it.
Right. And anyone who's working has some disability insurance through the Social Security system. The thing is, it's pretty hard to qualify for that. It's much easier. If you're more worried about a broader range of possible disabilities, it's better to have your own policy.
Right.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about, okay, now the baby's home. Now what?
Yeah. For us, my wife stayed home for a long time after the baby was born. So one of the biggest things that we were worried about was having a big enough emergency reserve because the scope of unknowns becomes infinitely larger. We don't know what we need to buy to take care of the baby. If something happened and I needed to stay home longer, how would we cover these expenses? So revisiting your emergency reserve, which hopefully you already have in place, is step number one. And maybe contributing more than you would just to build extra buffer in place of what you had before would be my first recommendation. The way that it can impact you on a daily basis from a tax perspective is there are certain tax credits that come with having a baby, which could help you. And that can be a nice opportunity to revisit your withholdings and get more of your dollars flowing through to you throughout the year instead of living on less and then waiting for a refund at the end. So there's a child tax credit, which is now $2,000 per child, which can help you out. There are also some other things like a child care tax credit, where, if you're not using that flexible spending account, you might have an opportunity to get money back in your taxes as well. But revisit your taxes, check your withholdings. I'd rather have my dollar today than tomorrow.
Right. And it's especially true, too, if one parent decides to stop working and stay at home, then your tax situation has changed considerably and another reason to revisit that.
Right. Absolutely.